All right, guys. We're still on sinners and saints. Um, Mark, I believe it's chapter 3. No, let me see. Anybody remember what verse we've been focused on? Sinners and saints. Yeah, I just don't remember. I think it's Mark chapter 1, verses 13 and 14. Let's see. Yeah, somebody can read it. No, I'm sorry. Yes, read 13 to 19. Yeah, yeah.
Where he was tempted by Satan for 40 days, he was out among the wild animals, and angels took care of him. Later on, after John was arrested, Jesus went into Galilee, where he preached God's good news. The time promised by God has come. At last. He announced, the kingdom of God is near. Repent of your sins and believe the good news. One day, as Jesus was walking along the shore of the Sea of Galilee, he saw Simon and his brother Andrew throwing a net into the water, for they fished for a living. Jesus called out to them, "Come, follow me, and I will show you how to fish for people." And they left their nets at once and followed him. At a little farther up the shore, Jesus saw Zebedee's sons, James and John, in a boat, repairing their nets. Is it?
19, yeah. And Judas Iscariot, who betrayed him. Okay, so for those of you who haven't been here in a while, we've been studying the different disciples called sinners and saints. Why do we call it sinners and saints? Because a lot of times the disciples have been portrayed as saints. And we look at them as if they aren't human just like us. Okay, so throughout this journey, we've been studying them and what makes them ordinary men. And the study is off of this book, 12 Ordinary Men. So far, we've spoken about Simon, Peter, right? James, his brother John. 2 weeks ago, we spoke about Andrew. And today, we're speaking about Philip. So before we get to Felipe. Uh-huh. And so before we even get to the class, tonight's icebreaker. Have you ever been in a situation where the math didn't add up? Yeah. All right. So go ahead. Jolie?
Oh, we have to say it?
Oh, you don't have to. I mean, if you want to share it. Donde la situación, de la manera que pasó, no debería pasar. De acuerdo a la lógica. Go ahead. Why are you smiling? You don't want to talk about it? Okay.
Not yet.
All right. I don't want no Jerry Springer scandalous stuff. I'm talking about.
That's the first thing I thought.
The math ain't mathing. No, but
that kind of happens a lot anytime somebody like blatantly lies and makes up some stuff.
Okay, but I'm not talking about in that context. But if you want to, I'm talking about a situation where this and this happened and it shouldn't have happened, but it did. Almost defying. I think that's for somebody. Oh, this is Cynthia and her mom? Yeah. Almost defying gravities. Hello, Cynthia. Hello, mama.
It's almost like knowing, almost knowing the answer, but then the answer is not what you thought it was, right?
How do I explain? Almost like miracle based, sort of. Have you ever had a situation? Go ahead, Rob.
So I've given this testimony before. My father was on life support. Since I was 13, they were telling me my father was going to die. He had lupus and Lupus is an autoimmune disease that attacks your organs. So basically, my mom at 13 was telling me, you the man of the house. You gotta grow up, you gotta watch your sisters, you gotta do all these things that my dad was supposed to do, but because it was always so sick, I was in the hospital, it wasn't happening. So, fast forward, I was 30 years old, my wife is pregnant, my younger sister's getting married, and my wife and I were trying to have kids for 6 years. It wasn't happening. Finally, she's pregnant. And I was praying. I'm like, God, my dad wants to see his grandkids. He has a granddaughter, but he doesn't have kids from his oldest, which is me. I'm like, I don't want my father to suffer anymore. He's been fighting this disease for 31 years. I don't want him to suffer anymore, but I know that he wants to see his grandchildren. I would love for him to see his grandchildren. I would love for him to be able to see my sister get married. All of these things that he wants to happen, but again, I don't want my dad to suffer. His heart only half of it was working. His kidney that my mom had donated to him would stop working. So the doctor was like, listen, if we give him dialysis, he'll die because his heart can't take it. And if we don't give him dialysis, he'll die because he'll be poisoned. So one way or the other, say goodbye because your dad is gone. So, I prayed. I'm like, listen, that's what you're saying, but I serve a mighty God. I serve a God that heals. This is all biblical, and he still does it today. So I don't care what you're talking about. I'm going to pray, and I'm going to believe that it can happen. If it's his will, it'll make it happen. If it doesn't, then my father can rest in peace. So they go and unplug him, and my father keeps breathing. So the doctors are like baffled. They don't understand what's going on. They're trying to explain. They're trying to understand how is this happening, what's going on. His kidney has stopped working for 3 days. When they finally unplugged him, when they started running tests, try to understand what happened. After 3 days of not working, his kidney started working again. That's why he kept breathing. That's why everything started functioning again. So the doctors came to us and they said, listen, your father is going to be okay. Your father is breathing. We couldn't explain it. And I said, what happened? They said, well, the kidney started working again. I said, I know what happened, but can you explain it? They said, no, we can't explain it. I was like, I can't. I prayed for it and God made it happen. Most of the time, doctors are atheists. They don't believe in the power of God. They don't believe in that stuff. They just believe in science. So here is something that baffled them. Here is something that they could not explain. So fast forward, that was, I believe, October, November of 2008. 2009 of March, my sons were born. And 2009 of May, my sister gets married. My father was able to see my kids be born, see my sister get married, and June 22nd of 2009, he passed away. So can't nobody tell me that God ain't real, because he made my prayers, he answered my prayers, and he gave a dying father the wish that he wanted. It was to see my sister get married and his grandchildren. That's math, ain't math.
Well, yep, that's a perfect example of when it's a situation where the math didn't add up. Anybody else got anything like that? Where logic and science couldn't explain it?
I mean, it's not really about math, though. It's just testimony about God's story.
But it is math, because according to math, according to logic.
No, I'm saying the story I'm thinking has nothing to do with math.
What's your story?
It's just a testimony about how God listens to me and answers, and then you gotta be careful what you ask for.
Okay, so share it.
I don't want to hear that again.
I don't remember the story. What story is it?
All right. Anyways, so I come to church. There's service. Worship is going on. I normally, turn around in my chair and pray. And that night, I have been going through stuff. That night, I asked God to speak to me like that, to speak to me. And so I get up, and Deborah was the one preaching, and like right in the middle of her sermon, she like literally puts me on blast. She was like, and everybody, like, the spirit was flowing, and like, but she was like, Xavier, you in front of the whole church. She's like, and Xavier, you just keep doing what you're doing, and stuff like that. And then she came afterwards and told me some other stuff, but like she really it was a little more than that. But basically, in front of the whole church, she was like, Xavier, you just keep doing what you're doing. Just keep doing it. God sees you. Just keep doing what you're doing. And yeah.
Yeah, I would say I think that's when I first came to American Christ last year. This year has been reform, right? Like you're being refined. And so not too long ago I was on the altar and I was on Wednesday prayer service and I remember like screaming and like crying and asking God like, show up. I don't even know if I'm serving you correctly. And I need you to show up. Pretty much demanding like his for him to show up in the way that he had showed up the last time. And it didn't come the way that I thought it would have came, but it came into a dream. And so I gave it to one of the leaders. And you know how you just walk around, like you walk around and you're just here, like you're physically here, but like you're empty. So I was like, God, there's something missing. I'm missing the mark somewhere, and I need you to show up. So I remember I gave it to the leader, and it was like a bridge, and water came and washed the bridge away. But it was my black car sitting on the bridge. The front bridge was washed away, the back was washed away, and I was there. But my daughter was sitting next to me in the helicopter, and God says, I am your direction.
That was a dream?
That was a dream. And it said,
You say you gave it to a leader?
I gave it to a leader to interpret the dream. And it said, God said, I am your direction. That exit no longer served as an exit. So you follow like my direction. And I was like, that I'm missing. So I felt like I was missing something.
Right.
But for God to show up in the way that I needed him to show up in. But I felt like the math wasn't mathing, but it was mathing at the same time. And so when you look at situations where God does show up and it might have not added up to what I felt like or what I thought should have been, that's what I'm
So that's what we're talking about tonight. God math, right? When this world or the rules of this world, gravity, science, math, they say this is this, and then God gets into the equation and changes everything. And there's no explanation. Now, for people who are faith-based people, that's okay. But if you're a logical thinker with numbers and you live life by rules and programs, it's going to be hard for you to understand that because your personality is based on facts. Now, just off of show of hands, how many of you are that type of people? In my type A, I thought of you the whole class, Julissa. My type A people. My type A people. They need structure. They need order. They have rules. This equals this and equals this, and that's it. You're not loopy. You're everything is like this.
When I first got my first encounter with the Holy Spirit.
Hold on. Say that again.
My first encounter with the Holy Spirit.
And did it throw you off because of your personality?
100%.
Because that's not how it works in your brain.
No.
So, analytical thinkers.
No, I never input the spiritual.
Right. All right. So I want you guys to keep that in mind, okay? Because as I was studying this class and studying the Apostle Philip, I thought of you the whole time because I'm definitely far from analytical. It's not my thing. So, but before we go there, before we get into that, I want everybody to look at this cup. And we're going to go around the room, but I don't want you to go based on anybody else's opinion, just yours. Because it's your voice. Every voice matters. So I'm going to ask you one by one. And I don't want you to answer based on what anybody else would say. I would answer based on your personality. And I know most of you pretty well, so I kind of know what route you're going to go. So Destiny, I'm going to go around the room. Destiny, is this cup half full or half empty?
It's more in the middle.
That's not an answer, my love. Half full or half empty? There's no gray area. It's either half full or half empty. What is your answer? Okay. Mimi. Okay. Okay. That's accurate for you. Shauna? Natalie, ¿sí? Mitad. Pero vacío o lleno? ¿Vacío o lleno?
¿Está medio vacío o medio lleno?
Medio vacío, ok. Jay. Okay. Juice. Okay. No. Y'all making it all complicated. It's either or. Okay. Court. Half full? Half empty? Oh, Jolie. You be honest.
It's either or. It's half empty because if
Well,
I'm
what is
really
it to
thirsty,
you?
then it's half empty. If I'm
All right, now, how are you very thirsty right now?
No.
Is it half full? Okay. Daisy. Oh, Daisy. Huh? Half empty? Ralphie. Half full. We'll talk later, Ralphie. I'm just kidding. Brian, half full? Half empty?
No, can it be like certain days?
No! My goodness.
I got my own thing, so I mean,
What is it today, right now?
What is it right now? Half empty.
Is it cold?
It's tap water.
Is it cold? That's all.
It's cold tap water. Why does it matter if it's hot or cold?
It definitely matters.
Hot and cold, that was last week's class, not this week. I said empty or full, not hot or
We
cold.
were here last.
But I was aware of the class.
Okay. Half full.
Okay. All right.
What's the answer?
I'll give it to you right now.
Depends on you.
Depends on you.
There's no right answer to this. Or wrong. No right or wrong.
Good. Before we get there, half full, obviously, optimistic viewpoint focused on positive aspect of a situation. Half empty, pessimistic viewpoint focusing on the negative aspect of a situation. Where do you stand? Are you half full or half empty? Here's your gut check for today. Has your faith been interrupted by logic? Where do you stand? Half full or half empty? Now, spiritually speaking,
How can you know you still?
has your faith been interrupted by logic? Because sometimes we're so smart. We're so smart in our own opinion. We're so intellectual. We know so much that we know nothing. Our intelligence interferes with our ability to believe what God has called us to believe. That is the problem. We're too smart for our own good. You're too smart. And when you're following Christ, logic is going to have to take a second step, and we're going to get into it. But it really all is perception. how you look at things, because we can all look at the same box and see 30 different boxes. But the reality is, whether you perceive God to be good or not, he's still good. That's the truth. How you perceive it is your business. But at the end of the day, the truth is that God is God. You can tell me that the sky is green. I've had that argument with people. Oh no, it's green. Or the world is flat. You can say that. You can imagine that in your mind. But truth is truth. However you want to perceive that is your business. But there's opinions and then there's truth. The truth is that there's water in this cup. That is the truth. How you perceive how much water is in that cup is on you. Based on your personality. If you're a negative Nelly, you're going to think this cup is half full, half empty. Because that's your go-to. That is your, what is the,
Default.
that's your default. And you know what? I'm not bombing nobody, Shani. Because sometimes we may be this way because that's how we were raised. We have traits from our parents. So if they always taught you to look at the cup half empty, you're going to do it and not even realize it. They probably do it and don't even realize it, that it's half empty. You were never really taught. And I was thinking about this. Huh? Or your personal experiences of life. But I'm going to share this. And this wasn't even part of the class, but it comes to topic. I was watching the show Love is Blind. Do y'all watch it? All right. No, not Love is Blind. Not that one. The Ultimatum. You either get married or you move on. You seen that show? All right. Well, it's a pretty good show because most of the time, the person who gives the ultimatum doesn't think they're going to lose the other person by giving them an ultimatum. And then the person who didn't want to get married and is given the ultimatum realizes they do want to get married, just not to that person. So, long story short, it mind boggles me watching the show to see the couples communicate and talk about their feelings. Why is that mind boggling for me? Because I wasn't raised that way. It was my mom's way or the highway. My dad didn't have a voice. And even if he wanted to have a voice, he was too drunk to have a voice. So I never saw them sit down and speak about conflict resolution. There was no such thing. It was either this is what it is or it's not. So me watching the show and seeing them talk about their feelings and say, well, I really didn't appreciate how you came home and brought your negative energy from work home. And the husband was like, I didn't realize I was bringing that home. But the fact that they were talking about it boggled my mind. Like, oh, wow, people do that? Like, you don't just kind of, you know what I'm saying? For me, because I was not raised that way, right? So my perception on relationships based on my past, based on my upbringing, cup is half empty. You don't communicate. You either yes or no, black or white, right? But is that normal? Is that healthy? No, it's not. But it's the way I was raised. So maybe we've been raised to look at the facts and we forget about the spiritual factor, like Jalissa had said. She was raised to look at the facts. The facts are A, B, C. But nobody ever incorporated to her that there is a real God who does real miracles and is still in the business of changing our lives, defying all logic and science, defying that, yes, one person could be this way, but God has the ability to change that person's life and do a 360. Now, if you've never been exposed to anything like that, that's going to mess with your brain because you're not used to it.
I think it has more to do with your personality from the jump.
Right.
Because, like, I can use this as an example. Like, you said the way you grew up, you're a half empty type person, right?
Yes, by default.
By default. But Victor grew up in the same house, and he's a half full type person.
Right.
Just like me and my brothers.
Two different experiences, same household.
It's just
personality.
It has a lot to do with the way God made you.
But exactly, God constructed us.
It's a combination between nature versus nurture.
Yes.
Yeah, but y'all weren't always in y'all life though. I mean, y'all had y'all separate lives though, right? Y'all weren't like buddy all the time. Y'all didn't leave the house.
No, we grew up in the same exact house.
Yeah, but
It's
you
like
got
with me and
different
it's like with me and my
perspectives.
4 brothers. Like I grew up in when I left the house, they left the house as well. But I left the house going to the streets. They left the house going to the park, and then my mom was calling them back home. You understand? So like I grew up I grew up differently, and then they like my brother could see half full, I see half empty.
We grew up basically the same, but remember, there's a 6-year gap. He had the hat of being a father. I was the oldest daughter, not by far not my father's favorite. You know what I'm saying? My father didn't raise. I was raised in daycare. My sister was raised with my father. So it's just, but either way, at the end of the day, whether we grew up in the same house or not, at the end of the day, it's all based on decision. We all have to make a decision whether he was raised a certain way, I was raised a certain way, whether you were raised rich, whether she was raised in poverty. At the end of the day, we still have to make a decision. And we can't blame our surroundings on the decisions that we make because...
Also life experiences that
Yeah.
I saw that she didn't see.
And vice versa.
And vice versa.
Right.
Yeah.
You guys were in the same household, but you guys had different
Yeah.
experiences.
Totally. Yeah, totally.
Plus, you have to
And
have
personality is big because where my sister will see that half empty and I see it half full, she's more of an outgoing person where I'm not. I don't like attention at all. I shy away from it where she loves it.
Nah, yeah, because like when I go out, they be like, "How y'all brothers? Like y'all don't even act the same." And I'm like, "We lived in the same house all our life."
You don't have to act the same. But look at my nephews. They're triplets. 3 different, and they're completely different.
I'm saying though, like there's certain traits in the family that you think like you carry together.
No, that's not always true.
I would say I think we forget that we sort of living.
And that's the factor. That's where we have to go.
So when she said that, right, that was her watching the story. I think even for us that serves God, forgets that we serve a living
Yes.
God that's still alive. And that was for me too. I didn't serve a living God, but I had to, I had to whatever. But we serve a God that is alive and living. That's where you forget. Very active.
And I want you to hold on to that part. That's where we forget. Let's remember that. I'm going to write it down. Because I think that is a core problem of many believers. That's where we forget. We forget a lot as Christians. We forget a whole lot. That is I dare to say this is like 75% of our problem on this walk with Christ. We forget. So let's go. So think about that. So for those of you who are new here, para los que están aquí nuevo, has your faith been interrupted by logic? ¿Tu fe ha sido interrumpida por la lógica? It's a question that you ask yourself. It's not for us to talk about. It's you have to ask yourself, is my faith being interrupted by the things that my mind won't allow me to because of what I know, right? So today we're speaking about, guys, I'm sorry. Am I the only one? Gentle, Lucindy, gentle. Gentle. We're speaking about the Apostle Philip. Does anybody know who he is? Because before this class, I'll be honest with you, I've been in church my whole life, never heard of the dude. Never heard of him. I quoted him, never heard of him. Anybody know anything about Philip besides the fact that he's a disciple? Good, I'm glad, because I'm not the only one. We're on the same boat. So, according to this book and the studies, this is what they say about Philip. He was a classic process person. He was a facts and figures kind of guy. By the book, practical-minded, non-forward thinking. He was kind, who tends to be corporate killjoy, pessimistic, narrowly focused, sometimes missing the big picture, often obsessed with identifying reasons things can't be done rather than finding ways to do them. He was predisposed to be pragmatist, and cynic, and sometimes a defeatist rather than a visionary. Okay? So sorry. I don't even know how to say those words. Facts and figures. Pesimista. No, nunca veía la foto mayor, siempre se enfocaba en las cosas pequeñas y bien negativa. No, yeah, and he's not a visionary, okay? The Apostle Philip. Okay. Oh, that's what I just read. Do you guys like this font? If you don't like it, I won't use it again. Okay, so I'm not going to use it again. Okay. Fun fact about Philip, Jesus reaches out to him personally. Jesus goes to him directly and says, "Follow me." 1-to-1. Somebody read it. John 1:43. No. He specifically said to him, it's like, how do I say it? It's like you being invited in a big group and then me saying to you, I can say, everybody, let's go. And then I say, Brando, let's go. So he specifically spoke to him. Somebody could read it in John.
The following day, Jesus wanted to go to Galilee, and he found Philip and said to him, "Follow me."
Specifically, okay? Normally, God reaches people through people. This was the exception to the rule. He didn't come because somebody else told him to come. He came because Jesus told him to come. Have you guys ever heard this verse before? John 15:16. You did not choose me, but I chose you and appointed you. Sometimes we think that we chose God. Oh, I found God. Well, God was never lost, so you didn't find him. He had already called you. So it's kind of cool to know that. Isn't that cool to know maybe that even before you even encountered him, he had already said you're mine. I love that. Okay? So here's the thing. So he's one of the disciples. He comes right after Andrew, and he, from what they say, he may have been one of the disciples of John the Baptist as well. Right? So this is what he does next. Philip quickly reached out to Nathanael with the good news of Jesus. So, okay, so far we know that Jesus calls him, "Follow me." Next thing he does is go tell somebody else about Jesus. Now, when you guys came to Christ, was that the very next thing you did? No, probably not. Or some of us, right? Like if you accepted the Lord, did you go the very next day and started telling people about the Lord? Some of us have. Some of us are automatically like, nah, I'm going to tell everybody about Jesus. I got to tell them. Right?
I remember somebody who did that OD. Like,
Who?
I mean, Christian.
Christian, yeah.
Anyway,
Yeah, he would tell everybody.
yeah.
He even called me out. He said, "I haven't seen you in church." That's beautiful. So he goes to Nathanael real quick. But check out the story, and maybe you've heard this story. Let's go to John, chapter 1, 45 and 46. And I think you guys probably have heard the verse 46. When you have it, read it, please.
Philip found Nathanael and said to him, "We have found him of whom Moses in the law and also the prophets wrote, Jesus of Nazareth, the son of Joseph." Nathanael said to him, "Can anything good come out of Nazareth?" Philip said to him, "Come and see."
Y'all heard that verse before? Can anything good come out of Nazareth? Why? Can anybody answer that to me? Why?
Nazareth was the hood.
Nazareth was the hood. It's like somebody saying, can anything good come out of Haverstraw? But here's the thing. Let's think about this. Who did I describe Philip to be? Calculated, analyst, pessimist, And yet Jesus calls him to follow him and he just follows him. It goes against his nature. That's not who he is. Somebody who's analytical, and I'm going to use Julius as an example, you're not just going to, if I tell you, Julius, we're going to go see this person, you're going to be like, well, hold on, I got to think about this.
Why?
I got to figure this out. Why would we go see that person? What is that person about? An analytical person is going to dot the I's and cross the T's. They're not just going to go with you and just go. Maybe somebody with my personality, somebody like Peter's personality is like, okay, cool, let's go. Philip was not that person.
You know, I'm pretty sure that's what Jesus wanted, though.
Of course it
That's
was.
what he wants for all of us.
Of course. But listen, but I want you to notice his personality. We already know he's an analytical person. We already know he's straight edge. He likes things done a certain way. He doesn't like to get out of his routine. Analytical people are like this. And yet Jesus says, follow me. He follows. And then he goes and tells people about him. He tells Nathanael. And what does Nathanael say? What Philip would have said. Nathanael says, hold up. Can anything good come out of?
Never.
What if you're in between?
What do you mean?
Well, what if you're that type of person that you'll be like, okay, yeah, I'm gonna jump up and do it. But there's times that you just sit there and be like, hold up, wait a minute, let me think about this.
Well, because now well, for those that have that type of personality, we have to hold back and think about it. And then the people who have that type of personality that think about it have to kind of step out a little bit more. So we all need each other.
I feel like that's what he chooses, though, because I feel like he chose people that needed to break that.
But of course, that is a very good observation. He chose people. If you look at the disciples, each and every one of us in this room can identify with at least one disciple. He didn't choose 12 people who looked exactly the same. He didn't choose 12 outgoing people. He didn't choose 12 introverted people. He didn't choose 12 perfect people. He chose 12 different men. In those 12 different men, humanity is expressed. Okay? So we see that Philip, in that moment, he follows Jesus. His faith defied logic in that moment. In that moment. I'm going to say it again. In that moment. Because his personality, and remember I said this to you guys, just because you start serving the Lord doesn't mean your personality gets washed away. It gets refined. Cuando comenzamos a servirle al Señor, no es que nuestra personalidad se va a borrar, sino que el Señor, el Espíritu Santo, lo refine, right? Refina. Yeah, lo pone, lo hace una imagen perfecta. All right? So, you start seeing your perception changes. But Nathanael says, can anything good come out of Nazareth? And how many of us, people have looked at us, and I could even say it, because I've got family members that live not here. And they're like, oh, well, you're from Haverstraw. And I'm like, slow down, shorty. Because people may look at you like you're from Haverstraw like it ain't no thing. But Haverstraw has a lot of good. Just because you focus on the glass half empty. I'm sorry, when I look at Haverstraw, I don't look at Haverstraw like a dump. I don't, and some people are, it's just a black hole. Well, no, that's your perception. I've done so well here. I'm happy here. Other people move here. So if you're not happy, wherever you go, you're not going to be happy. So go to Florida then. Or go to Chicago. Or go to Puerto Rico. Go wherever you want. Because wherever you go, you're going to be there. You'll still be unhappy. Because, well, that's another topic anyway.
Give a testimony on how your perception changes when you come to the Lord.
Yes.
When I first came to the Lord, those that know where the old retreat was, it was like you had to go like through this deserted cotton field. Was that a cotton field?
She said a cotton field. Girl, we're not in Virginia.
Cornfield, right? And at night it looked so ugly and scary, and I was just like, ooh, what is this? And then by Sunday that I came to the Lord, that the Lord, did his thing, I was just like I literally saw that cornfield beautiful. I saw colors and I was just like,
This is so beautiful. And this is I know everybody was looking at me like I was crazy.
No, but it's your
It's
perception.
the way that I saw it then. You know, like, wow, like,
You
this
saw
was
it at night.
ugly on Friday, and
You saw it
now,
at night.
right, but.
At night it looked super creepy.
Yeah, but it's all perception. It's all perception because if you could go to the wackest place and then go with somebody you're recently dating and you're in love and you're like, this is so romantic. You've been there 1,000 times. You've been to the Nyack Beach State Park 1,000 times. You never found it romantic. Yeah. Now you go with your boo and you're like, this is so romantic. It's that puppy love. It's that it changes the color of the vision. And the stupidest little piece of real can make it look so romantic. And it's just because of the people you're with. Philip is hardly mentioned in the Bible, right? He's literally, y'all didn't even know about him. That's how much he's mentioned. By the way, Philip the evangelist is not Philip the apostle. Philip, the one that's mentioned in the book of Acts, for those of you who have already read in Acts, is not the same guy. Totally different guy. All right? So what can we learn from him so far? If we know God the way we know him, we know this isn't the end of his story. Because God shows the good, the bad, and the ugly. So what can we learn from Philip so far? Based on the two things I told you.
That he can show that he can be led by faith.
Okay. And what else?
I gave you one. Go look at
What else? What else can we learn from him? You can go by faith even if you're a type A personality, right? Faith can defy logic. What else can we learn from him? But we know that with God is always going to show us the other side. There's always another side to it. But what can we learn so far from Philip? Anything else? No? Well, when we get saved, it's good to spread the word. You know, that's another one, right? John chapter 6. This is the core of our class today. 6:4-7. Somebody read it. And if we've read this story over 15 times, guys, it's because the disciples, I've never looked at this story so much as I've had in this series. You know what story this is?
I'll read it.
Go.
Now the Passover, a feast of Jews, was near. Then Jesus lifted up his eyes, and seeing a great multitude coming toward him, he said to Philip, where shall we buy bread that these may eat? But this he said to test him, for he himself knew what he would do. Philip answered him, 200 denarii worth of bread is not sufficient for them, that every one of them may have a little. That's 4-7.
Do you guys remember this story? We've only spoke about it 15 million times. What's the story? Jesus feeds the 5,000 again. We studied it with Andrew. Remember? And what did Andrew say? Anybody remember what Andrew said?
We don't have enough to feed these people.
No, he's not the one that said that. Andrew's the one.
Andrew's the one who said, this little boy here with 5 loaves of bread.
But we're seeing the different personality. But look what Philip says. He went straight to the money. He's like, we ain't got that.
He pulled out the
You got
calculator.
enough.
He pulled out the calculator, being analyst that he is. We ain't got that.
200.
But let me ask y'all, why did Jesus ask him?
Because he wanted to teach them a lesson.
He wanted to teach him a lesson, number one. Number two, they were going to Bethsaida, I believe, right? Bethsaida, and Philip was from there. So that was another reason why he asked him. But he wanted to teach him a lesson because did Jesus not know what the answer was going to be? Of course he knew. But sometimes Jesus will ask us something, not because he doesn't know, but because maybe we don't know.
Like we do to our kids.
When he asked for, do you love me?
Yes. Do you love me? You know, when you ask your kid, did you do that?
And you know they
I'll hit Amaya up. I'll be like, knowing damn well she did it. Did you clean the bathroom? She'll be like, yeah, I cleaned the bathroom. I said, yeah? You mopped? Question mark. Did you clean the bathroom? She goes, I cleaned it. I said, you didn't mop. You didn't sweep. You didn't clean it. I knew the answer. I wanted her to answer it so she can get her butt back downstairs and clean the bathroom. So I don't clean bathrooms. But Jesus is asking him because he wants him to realize it. Sometimes Jesus will ask us because we're doing something and we don't even realize we're doing it. Have you ever had those type of sins? Where you're doing something that's offensive to the Lord and you don't even realize that it's offensive to the Lord, and you thought you were good. And then middle of the night, the Lord whispers in your ear, I didn't like the way you spoke to that person. You're like, ooh, really?
Even agreeing with someone that God gave me a revelation yesterday in my tub while I was showering. And it was like I didn't have nothing to do with the situation, but just because I agreed with it, I was a part of it. And it was just like the Lord was like, you have to not judge. And it's just like, but I wasn't saying anything, but just listening to the gossip or
You were still part of it.
Already agreeing and judging the person.
Mm-hmm. 200 denarii worth of bread is not sufficient. Here's the thing. This is where his pessimistic attitude comes out. Why was it wrong? Okay, here's the question. Was it wrong for him to say that?
No.
Okay, why not?
He was spitting facts.
Yeah.
He was going with the logic.
He was spitting facts.
It wasn't a fact what he said.
Yes.
Porque es lo que él vio.
Okay,
He was wrong because he was negative.
but why would it be considered negative, Cynthia?
Because
Because there was no like, it was like either that way, like giving no options for like hope, like not giving any type of
right there.
like this is what it is, we're not gonna go there.
Okay, hold on.
Como se dice que los apóstoles se olvidan la cosa. Se olvidan que Jesús puede hacer milagros.
You forget that Jesus could do miracles. They had already seen miracles. And that's the problem. That's why it was so insulting. Why is it so insulting? Philip, you're one of the disciples. You seen Jesus turn water into wine, and you're telling Jesus there's only 200 denarii? That's your response? That's not the response he should have answered with.
Well, Lou,
Yeah.
the Lord, I'm just playing devil's advocate.
Go. I love it.
Lou, but the Lord allowed you to be on dialysis only for 6 months, and you got a kidney transplant, and then something small happens in your life and you're questioning God, right? So that's how we are.
But of course, but that's the problem.
In our lives, and we're like, Lord, like He's taking us out of it a million times, but that's just in our nature.
But that is the problem. That He's done, we forget.
Right.
He's done it before. He's done it before. You're crying about this. You don't remember what God did? You were on dialysis only for 6 months, which is unheard of. I didn't know that at that time. To get a transplant within 6 months, unheard of. For your brother to be a perfect match, unheard of. A miracle. And yet in that moment, you're so caught up in your own. You don't even realize it. And then years pass. Because now it's been, what year are we in? It's going to be 15 years in June that I have a kidney. And I tend to forget at the trivial problems that I have now. And I forget that it delighted God to keep me alive. And yet I still struggle. And this is the truth. And you don't have to delete this. But I still struggle with suicidal thoughts. Imagine being given the gift of life and still being tormented with suicidal thoughts. Imagine that. Because the devil is a liar, and that's what he does. And so what do we do what do I have to do to counteract that? I need to get into my word and renew my mind, because then I know that it's a spirit that wants to break me, because he knows that God wants me for something greater. And if the devil can't do it himself, he'll use myself to destroy myself. Does that make sense to you? Where the devil can't touch you because of your past. The devil can't touch you because of your spouse. The devil can't touch you because of your family. But he can torment you in your mind where you destroy the very things God has given you in your hands. And we think, oh no, I'm just going crazy. No, there's a demonic attack on your life. And your faith is being interfered with by logic because the enemy keeps telling you not this time. There's no way this person can be healed. There's no way you'll get out of that hole because it's never been done before. But if we're going to go by it's never been done before, I should have been dead a long time ago then, right?
There was a brother that used to come here and he said that he prayed for something right now. And when it's answered, write it down. That way, when those seasons come where you're going through something and you're having all these doubts and you're just really struggling with your faith, you can fall back on those answered prayers. You can fall back and say, no, God has been faithful. And He's been faithful to this, and this, and this, and all these prayers have been answered, and that means that this one is also going to come through. But the enemy is real, and he wants to put those doubts in you. You could have seen the things that I've seen. You could have seen greater things. You could have seen so many things in your life, but like him, we tend to have amnesia, and you get something brand new, and you're like, you cherish it in that moment. But once it starts to get kind of old, it's not the same. It's whatever. But when you first got it, it was like everything to you. You prayed for it. You wanted it so bad. Now that you got it, it's whatever. Now you're on to the next thing. You can't forget how hard you worked for whatever it was that you prayed for. You can't forget how grateful you were in that moment that you got whatever it was that you were praying for. That's why it's so important to write these things down, because we do tend to have amnesia. And it's not, you're not trying to forget. Not that you're ungrateful. It's just human nature. We move on to the next thing. So this is why it's so important, because we will have good seasons. And we'll have seasons where we're gonna be needing something to hold on to, where it's like your faith is like crushed. Like, what is going on? Why? You're asking all these questions. Why is this happening, or why? And then you go back into all your answered prayers, and you're like, you know what? All right, God, you're working. That's it. I'm gonna leave it in your hands. This is what it's gonna be, and I just have to be patient and know that you're gonna answer my prayers in your way, not the way that I want, but the way that you see fit for me.
And for me, I did give you a little testimony that happened to me on Tuesday. A lot of people know that I was submitted into the hospital. I was submitted to the hospital because of my heart. So I'm being battling with sickness. This will be my third time I've been in the hospital for any sickness. So on Tuesday, Monday I started feeling numb in my heart, and I was painful. So Dr. DeGee told me, sent me to the hospital and said, go and check, make sure that everything is okay, and make sure that you don't have nothing. So I was already furious going on the way. Because in my mind, I was saying the devil used the same technique over and over and over and over. And sometimes you don't catch it because you're into that emotion. Because you're sick, you don't know where it's coming from. And I'm going, I even called Gina and I said, Gina, this is again, he's coming again attacking me for my health. You don't have nothing else against me to take me from somewhere. So I'm going on my way and I'm mad. And then I get to the hospital, my husband is there. I get a nurse, they don't even ask me my name at all. I don't know what medication I have. She didn't take it. They couldn't find my baby. They put me everywhere. And I said, what's going on? I got so mad because I told the nurse, can you please check if I can eat? I'm diabetic. I didn't eat all day. Can you please tell me if I can eat? So I don't have no time. I have 2 reports to do. So I cannot check right now. You're going to have to work to go upstairs. And I called my husband and said, you bringing me McDonald's and you bringing me my son because I'm eating. I was so upset. And then to a point that I was pressing the button so she could come in so I could have argument with her. She didn't show up, not even for the button. And I was so upset. And I said, God, why you let me go through it? And I'm thinking, they let me over. Then she asked me, because after digging to her delivery report, asked my husband. My husband went to her and he didn't know my husband. So I'm in already in that state of mind. I'm gonna quit and I'm gonna leave this hospital. And I keep pressing the button and she didn't show up. Mama, she was going. I was like, oh my God, if this woman don't come in. Then a doctor came in. Said, Dr. Begin sent me. I said, okay. Then she show up. Oh, how you been, sweetie? How is you doing? Oh, I was already furious. I said, this woman is gonna take it for anyway. They put me upstairs. She trying to get the report that she has to get Dr. Begin. I passed all the line, and in the morning, now that I'm leaving, they're gonna move me to another room. I said, why are they moving me to another room? See, I'm leaving. I'm already alone. Why you put me away with another person? So then my husband came and I told him to bring me food because I'm hungry. I didn't know the person next to me is Jewish.
You didn't know what?
I didn't
Jewish.
know that the person that I was next to is Jewish Christian. She's a Jewish. So I'm coming in, I sit down, I say hello to this woman, and Victor brings me the food. Something in my heart said, do not eat this food in front of this woman. Do not open your fork. Do not eat this here. So I close my food again and I put it away. But I see the boy is kosher. Or Dali is kosher. Victor asked, oh, I like your accent.
She has
Your Boston accent.
OG.
And we started talking.
Boston?
We started talking. I started helping her with the doctor that she needs because she almost died the day before because they gave me the raw medication. She was allergic to it. And we started talking about the Lord. Talking about the Lord. And I said to Victor, it's going to a whole hour. You know what she said? I know God sent you for this hour.
Wow.
To minister to me because I needed it.
Wow.
Thank you for talking to me and help me to find another doctor because I'm desperate to find a doctor.
Wow.
And then when we went to IHOP, God is so specific. I was sitting and I said, I was.
Get to that part.
What?
We talked to her about Dr. Begin.
Uh-huh.
Now, Dr. Begin, our doctor,
It was not taking new
hasn't
patients.
been taking new patients because he was like ready
Oh,
to
we're not
retire.
too retired.
So we told her about Dr.
And I
Begin,
felt
raving
bad.
about that because she's also having kidney problems.
Problems, yeah.
And he's a renal specialist.
Yeah.
So we told her about it and we're like, man, I kind of feel bad because
I told them I feel better because that's the beginning
we
doesn't
didn't say
say.
that to her. But we felt bad. Man, I forgot that.
Yeah, but he'll refer her to somebody
No,
else.
no, this is nothing. When I'm sitting in IHOP, God comes to me like that. Did you remember the 3 times you went to the hospital? Did the devil use that against you, the put you in the hospital? So 3 times you spoke about my word. 3 times you talked to nurses about me. The nurse that felt the Holy Spirit. You talked to a woman that was psycho, remember? That she used to call me Star. I ministered to that woman and she probably don't understand, but I ministered to her spirit. Then I come to this, the last one, and I went and talked to this woman. That man said, whatever the devil you said,
Turn it around for good.
my blessing.
That's right.
So you'll never forget who I am. And when I looked at the beginning starts accepting new patients.
Wow.
So
For the first time in like 10
I
years.
left angry, but I left with a joy in the heart that at least my situation that I was going through, I still got ministered to me
Yeah.
and people around.
God will always turn it around. This is how he should have answered. He should have said, what a glorious occasion. Jesus is going to teach this crowd. What a tremendous opportunity for the Lord. All pessimistic Philip could see was the impossibility of the situation. So the question for you today is, what situation are you in that you can only see the pessimistic part of it? The problem. What situation are you in that God has already done so much in your life, but you're so hooked or caught up on, well, this is a different situation. Well, really, it's not. Because God is still, it's still the same God.
Funny how we do that. We trick ourselves that that's something that I'm dealing with a lot lately with myself, that I discovered that I'm the devil's favorite weapon for myself.
We are.
I am the devil's favorite weapon.
We are our yes. We are our worst
We're the
enemy.
ones that set ourselves for failure time and time again. So what I'm doing now differently is that when doubts want to creep in my mind, I'm like, I'll have my eyes fixed on Jesus. I don't care about, it took myself completely out of the equation. I completely took myself out of the equation. I'm like, my opinions, my thoughts, my logic don't matter no more.
I'm glad you brought it there. Pause right there. When we talk about temptation, and I'm going to bring it right back to what he said. When I say the word temptation, what comes to your mind? Real quick, just shout it out. Yeah, that's good. Sin, but what kind of sin?
He's an enticing thing. Whatever's enticing.
No, whatever's enticing to you. But let's talk about it. When I talk about temptation, what kind of sin what comes to your mind real quick? Adultery, what else? Lust, fornication, what else? Drinking, stealing, what else? Drugs, what else? Right? Those are the go-tos. When we think about temptation, am I right or am I wrong? When we think about the word temptation, we think sex, right? Especially if you're not married. Or even if you're married. Maybe you want to have sex with somebody else. Who knows? Adultery, drugs, alcohol, pornography, ice cream, food. But have you ever thought about this? What he just said? The temptation to think in a negative way? What did you say? Your thoughts, emotions, and his logic. Have you ever been tempted to think in a certain way, to feel in a certain way? Think about it. Remember how I said about the suicidal thoughts? That's a temptation to think that way. That's a temptation to think that way.
It is a temptation.
That's not fully you coming to thought.
No. It's not. But here, it's not. But I'm going to give it to you. That same teacher that told him about the notes also told him this. A bird can fly around on top of your head. It's your decision if he makes a nest on your head. It's your decision. The enemy can whisper something into my ear. Now, how long am I going to think about it is up to me. Nope, because we have the power of Christ in us to control every thought that comes. We can cancel every negative thought that comes into our minds.
It's not about you.
We have the ability to cancel thoughts. You can think about what you're thinking about. You can think about what you're thinking about. Now, if you think about, it's like this. If somebody crosses you and hurts your feelings, I'm this type of person. I'm a thinker. So, and I'll never forget, my trainer at the gym told me, you're like a cow. I was like, wow, this is really not working out the way I thought it would be. She's like, you're ruminating. And I said, what a ruminator que se yo qué? I said, what the hell is that? She goes, cows, when they eat grass, they chew and chew and chew. That's ruminating. Yeah. She was like, you are a ruminator. I said, so you're calling me a cow and I just hired you to be a gym instructor? And she goes, no, because you're the type of person that when you get a thought in your mind, you think about it and think about it and think about it and overanalyze and think about it and you put it in a box and you put it in a circle and then you put it in a triangle. Then that's what the question is, rumination. Yeah. And you know what? She was like, you need to not think about that. And I've realized that my personality is that when I get a thought and somebody hurts my feelings, I keep thinking about it and thinking about it. And I never forget. There was a season in my life where my sister and I weren't speaking. And I was thinking about it and thinking about it and thinking about it. But at the time I was in the program to get my bachelor's. And I was sitting at my desk and I was thinking about my sister and how we're not talking. And I was sitting there and I'm at the computer typing, but I was thinking about my sister and I wasn't even thinking about what I was typing. And I felt the Holy Spirit tell me, you can sit here for another hour and think about the problem you had with your sister, or you could take the next hour and think about the paper that you have to submit tomorrow. What are you going to do? Because the problem with your sister ain't going to do nothing by you chewing on it. So what I'm going to tell you to do right now, this is the Holy Spirit, I tell you. Forget about the problem with your sister. You gave me the problem. There's nothing you could do about it. Put it to the side and start working on that degree that you want to get. I tell you guys in front of God. That day was the last day I worried about the situation with my sister. That thought happened in like September. By November, my sister and I had reconciled. It's nothing by what I did. The Lord made it happen. So what is my point? We can decide what we're going to chew on. The enemy can whisper in our ear all we want. He can tell you you're better off dead. He can tell you you're better off drugging yourself up. He can tell you the world is better off without you. You could sit there and entertain it and think about ways to kill yourself. And I'm being rated R because we're adults. That's exactly it. You can entertain the thought. And I'm being I don't know why I'm hitting on suicide so much. Maybe somebody's dealing with it. I don't know. But I'm going to be honest with you. You can entertain the thought, or you can say, I rebuke you, devil, and start focusing on something else. Because the truth is, and Shauna says it all the time, life is very short. You don't want to look back as, man, I spent 12 hours that day thinking about ways I can die, when I could have spent 12 hours with my kids, when I could have spent 12 hours working on myself, when I could have spent 12 hours reading God's word, when I could have spent 12 hours speaking to people about the power of God's love. The enemy doesn't care if you come to church. He does not care if you come to church. It does nothing for him. But the moment you start opening your mouth and becoming a disciple for Christ, that's when you become a threat to his kingdom. You coming to church does absolutely nothing for him. If when you leave this church, you leave God here with it.
You know what the big problem is, that why he wants to cut us out? Because if we wake up, we realize who we truly are in Christ, we're going to be a problem.
Yes.
We're going to be a big problem.
Yes.
Right? One Jesus, 2,000 years ago, he was trying by any means necessary to get that man eliminated. Because we only think, oh, well, when they got him in the cross. No, they were trying to kill him a bunch of times.
Over and over.
Over and over and over again. Why? Because the devil knew we got to get this man out of here. Yeah, from birth.
But imagine this, going back to JD's testimony. Imagine if she would have sat in that hospital room feeling sorry for herself for the 48 hours she sat there. How many times do we sit in our own thoughts, in our own minds, and God called us to do an assignment, to do something, but we're so caught up in our own self-pity. And like I said, was Philip wrong by saying that there's only 200 denarii? No, that was logic. That was truth. That's okay. It's true. What you're feeling is real. Did she have the right to feel sad, upset, frustrated? Yes, we're human. I'm not asking you to be super people. But then we forget that there's another part to us. We're not bodies with a spirit. We're spirits with a body. You caught that? We're not bodies with a spirit.
And at the end of the day, it's our choice.
It's our choice. Everything comes down to choice. You don't have to live that way. You choose to live that way. You can actually, Brandon, you actually have the ability to snap yourself out of depression. The pastor says it all the time. You have the ability to anoint yourself. You have the Holy Spirit dwelling inside of you. You don't have to wait to come to church on a Saturday and go to the altar to have an encounter with God. You can have an encounter with God in the shower. It's all about being intentional. If you want to speak to God, speak to God. God, I need to hear from you right now. You could be in the middle on a subway. It's whether you're willing to see and hear. A lot of times we're not. And it's not anybody's fault, but that's the purpose of these classes, for us to open up our minds.
You gotta be intentional.
Be intentional. Change your perception. God is talking to us all the time. And we think, oh, I can't wait till Saturday so God can send me a word. Heck no. You can ask God right in your room. Send me a word. I need to hear from you. And when we ask God, He gives us. The other day I was in such a funk. And I say ask Ariel because sometimes I'll hit him up and I'll be like, yo, I was in such a funk and my mind was in a cloud with so much work. And I felt rebuked because this is what I asked for. But at the same time, I feel like I'm on a train and I can't get off. And my mind was all over the place. I said, Lord, but you gave me this job. Why can't I focus? And the Lord put it in my heart because you're not putting me first. You're trying to Lucindy to do it. I gave you this, but you have to lean on me. So the other day I put this, that's why I told you that song. Instead of starting off the day with listening to whoever it is that I've been listening to, Sia, I'm Unstoppable. I was like, I'm not going to listen to Sia today. I'm going to listen to CeCe Winans or whatever. And I put on a song called One Name. And I tell you guys, for 20 minutes, I sat in my living room and I worshiped the Lord by myself, sang my little heart out like how I do at the altar. And I tell you, I was elevated to a whole nother level and there was nobody there. There was no worship team. There was no Lewis, who's amazing on the drums. There was no musicians. It was just me and the music and the Lord. And I felt like the Lord took me out of my body and renewed me so that I would have the strength to deal with the things that I deal with, because I'm talking to people all day. What's my point? That God is not limited to the church. God is not limited to a box. God is not limited to math. And I want to bring it to this, and I can't finish without telling you guys this, but Brandon had asked me, what's math got to do with God? I love that. And if you know anything, how many of you have little kids? So you know about this new math? What's it called? Common Core? Where instead of just saying 1 + 1 = 2, they're telling you, well, half of a 1 and half of 1 and half of 1 and half of 1 equals, right? But at the end of the day, new math is math, right? God's math is not the same as the world's math or even the new math. In the world's math, you have 10 apples and you take one out and give it to someone else. How many apples you have? 9. In God's math, when you take 10% of what you have and give it back to him, you actually end up with more. That's God's math. It's called tithe. In the world's math, when you subtract something from what you have, you end up with less, right? That's logic. In God's math, we get more by giving. When we give offerings to God and help the poor, it is treated as an investment in the kingdom, and the dividends are phenomenal. In the world's math, if somebody treats you bad, you treat them bad. In God's math, somebody treats you bad, you treat them good. And you'll be blessed. Because God's math defies logic. Because God is above logic and facts. So whatever the doctor told you, whatever definitive thing that you've been told, rebuke it in the name of Jesus. Because God is above all logic. All logic. It doesn't matter what they said, Brandon. It doesn't matter what you've been told. It doesn't matter that they said these are the facts. They can be facts, but I want your response to be this, but God is still God. Those can be facts. We're not going to deny the facts, because then we'd be living in oblivion. Right? Like Shauna said, God gave us brains to think, but God defies all logic. What do we learn from Philip? That God defies all logic, and that Philip should have remembered that. He should have remembered that, and he didn't. He's human, it's okay, but it's a way for us to identify with him. Go ahead.
I tend to forget a lot that God has been so good to me. For example, 3/29/2001, I died, giving birth to my youngest daughter, Joanna. Well, I had a tough pregnancy, so the doctor had warned me that my body was not going to take the baby. But me, being stubborn and hard-headed, and didn't want a C-section. I wanted to have her normal, so I died. And the whole time that I'm in the hospital, I can't push nothing. And at that time, I forgot about God, because I used to go to church, but then once I got pregnant, I was so angry because I did not want her. I would jump on top of a table and throw myself down because the doctor would not do an abortion.
Right.
And I was so angry. I would jump. I would do everything and fall on purpose just to have a miscarriage. So when I go to the hospital to give birth, I started praying in my, like, I'm dead. I see myself, like, laying on the bed. I start praying, and I asked God to forgive me. Like, please forgive me. Like, I don't know what I was doing. I need to go home to my kids. And if you take me away, these kids are going to be grown up. And the reason I say that is because I tend to forget that God has been so good. Even when I felt like God had left my side when my son got killed, and everything, I feel like, yeah, he didn't forget about me. He's always been there. I'm the one that's forgetting about him. Because I've had so many blessings come my way, and I just brush it off like it's nothing.
But it's a temptation to think that way.
But then yesterday, I was so angry at myself. Like, I don't know why this anger came, and I started thinking about when I died and I came back, like, because the doctor was praying. So when I opened my eyes, I felt tears, and I heard a beautiful voice say, "It's not your time, wake up." And when I looked at the doctor, he's praying for me. So yesterday, all those thoughts went through my mind. I was like, I was so angry, and I just grabbed my bag, and my husband's sitting on the he's sitting on the couch, and I grab my bag, and I go to the kitchen, and I just start reading the Bible. I even say, like, I praise God in my mind.
Right.
I never say hallelujah, praise, but yesterday in the kitchen, I'm praising God.
Amen.
I started praising, I started like talking loud, and as I'm reading, I'm like, Santo, like, yeah, and I wasn't even paying attention to myself. I was just reading that. I read so much. And then after that, I was like, I'm saying, because I forget a lot of times that God has been so good. You know, so yesterday was one of those moments that I was like, wow, I was so angry. Like, and I don't even know why I was angry. And just reading and just, it was Matthew. I was reading the whole thing of Matthew. And I was just sitting there and I was like, oh my God, this is so good. And it's just, sometimes we forget, but God is so amazing.
Not sometimes. A majority of the time we forget. It's not about following Jesus. It's about following Jesus and trusting him. And remembering, it's good. We need to reflect. Especially when you're in a hard time, you need to remember God's resume. That's very hard to do when you're in a dark time. Es bien difícil hacerlo cuando estamos en un tiempo oscuro. But today's class is to remind us that God's word is the final word. It defies all logic. And I'm going to leave you with this last verse. I think that we get into the routine. We get into the routine of church. We get into the routine of life. We just play the part, come to church. We forget that this is like an ongoing relationship, that he actually cares about, it always boggles my mind when I'm struggling with something in my brain, and then I'll turn a sermon on YouTube and they'll be talking about the exact same thing I'm going through. And I'm like, yeah, I was like, yeah, even now I'll be like, yeah, that's just a coincidence. So I'll change it to another YouTube and it's the same story. I'm like, yeah, okay. Change it again, it's the same story. I'm like, oh, I guess he's talking to me. Like sometimes we just like we're dumb. Sometimes we're just dumb. We just don't want to realize. Go ahead, Kathy. Oh, Brando, you have something? I have one more verse for you guys. Go ahead. It kind of doesn't go anywhere, I think, with the conversation. No, it's fine. Go ahead.
I was just gonna say that I too, like Julissa, like you're not the only one. Like I'm and chatting with you just said, like I struggle with that. Like I'm a real
pessimist,
a real negative person, and so it was a really awesome topic today. But like I'm trying with like the death of my brother, it's given me a lot of perspective in a lot of areas, and as cliche as it sounds, I'm trying to make his death like very purposeful for my life. And one of the things about Jose, and if you came to his memorial service, you would see the amount of people that were here and the legacy that he left behind, regardless of the situation, is that everyone loved him because he was the sweetest person and because he was just so positive, right? And so I said that in when I spoke about him, is that I always envied that, because I said, how can someone who doesn't really follow the Lord, faithfully, but still has that seed in him, how can he be so positive, right? And in the midst of his circumstance and, the individual who we met, I saw the text my brother sent to him. My brother's homeless, no family, no nothing, and he's sending him
today's a new day. You have the power
Wow.
to make it better or to make it worse. And he's, you know, he's homeless and he has nothing, you know. And so I'm just like,
Hold on. He did have a lot because every video that I have of him with Eli, he speaks about God. So even though he was homeless, he had Jesus all the time with him.
Right.
So that's one thing I know about him.
but it just, like, for me, it's like.
But for her, it's kind of like an oxymoron.
It was an oxymoron.
Like he's in a way worse situation and he's positive, and she's in a better position, but she can't.
But it's something that you struggle with every day, you know, and that could be something that, you know, I've always struggled with that, but for me, it's like, I'm very intentional now, like with, like I have power over my thoughts and what I can make my day like and what I can spend my time on and what, like personal growth in the Lord and in myself. And it's
Right.
because, like, I want to be purposeful about that him, in the midst of his circumstance, he always loved the Lord and he was very positive regardless of the situation. And me living and being in the church my whole life and being the complete opposite, it's not a testimony of God's love, and that was, you know, so.
But it's the thoughts. And the reason why I brought up the whole temptation thing is because a lot of times, I don't know if you guys thought of it, but obviously you did, because when I said temptation, you listed all these things, but we never say the temptation to think negatively. We never say that. And it's the truth. Like, you know,
That's our normal
we think it's our normal state, and it's not normal to think negatively. It's not, you know, and it could be nature versus nurture, right? My father was always dying, so naturally, right? Me thinking like, of course it's natural to think about death or to think about death all the time. No, that's not natural. Yes, you don't have to think that. Maybe I thought that way as I was growing up because I wanted to make sure he was alive, but he died now. Why am I still thinking this way? So now I have to fight against the temptation to think that way. I have to think purposely and say, no, I'm not going to worry if somebody's going to be here with me today and die tomorrow. I can't think that way. Because if I think that way, I'm never going to leave this box. If I think this way, my daughter will never drive a car.
But you could also look at it in a sense where, in a positive light, where because of what we saw with our father, you appreciate every single moment and you capture every single moment with your camera.
That's true.
Importance in moments where people will look at a moment and it's just whatever, where you really like appreciate every single moment. And my sister posted a lot of pictures with my mom. There was one that she posted last week or a week ago or something like that. And it was just such a tender, beautiful moment. And I'm like, because I know our mom won't last forever. I don't want to think about it, but I know it's just part of life. But there's so many memories that she's captured. And I don't have a lot of pictures with my dad. You know what I'm saying? So it's just, I know that those moments are captured and they'll be treasured. You know what I'm saying? She doesn't take any moment for granted, is what I'm saying. We live our life like a robot sometimes, and we don't take advantage and appreciate the people around us. We don't take advantage and appreciate the moments that we have at that given moment. And then when something happens, when we realize, wow, how precious and how important those moments were, that we could sometimes, sadly, we could only rely on our memory. But when you have somebody like a photographer like my sister, where she has video, she has pictures, like, and I tell this to people all the time, because I'm a father of triplets. Anytime I see a new kid be born, I'm like, yo, take pictures and take videos of everything.
Yeah.
Because before you know it, you got 3 grown men looking at you like, yo, what's up, Dad? Like, I miss those little things because I work so much. I still work overnight, so I miss a lot.
Everything.
I missed a lot.
Yeah.
See, I missed a lot for the first 3 years because I was working so much and we couldn't afford daycare. So if you're a parent of young children, do yourself a favor. Pictures, videos, and do it daily, because before you know it, I'm telling you, they're gonna be growing. You're gonna be like, man, I remember when but it's here. But you can't just go back to it. So do yourself a favor and be intentional about it. Record take pictures a lot. And don't feel like some type of way. No, do it on purpose, because when they get to that age, you're gonna be like, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
You're gonna fall back on those memories. It's a beautiful thing, you know?
Yes.
But you know what I learned this week is sometimes we spend so much time in our misery instead of asking to pray and change the dynamic. I learned this week, and in that whole time, I wanted to worship the Lord, even though my circumstances was a different dynamic. Is we get so caught up in our emotions, in our pain.
And again, it's human. It's human. It's human, right? But we have to be intentional. And we're actually, I'm gonna give it to you now. This is actually the last class I'm teaching this year. This year, guys, calm down. Ariel's teaching next Friday is the last Friday Night Live of the year, because the following we're having service downstairs. And I was just thinking about that, like, oh shoot, like this is the last Friday Night Live that I'll be teaching this year. And like for you guys, just like, okay, well, it's not like we're gonna be here next year. It's not that, but it's just like, wow, like, yeah, you know, you just, it's even this, you know, like, oh, we may even take moments like this for granted, but you know what? There may come a time, we don't know, with the way things are going, that who knows if we'll even be able to get together. Like you don't know. This is what the Lord gave me to give you as the last verse. Ephesians chapter 3, verse 20. God is able to do far more abundantly beyond all that we ask or think. God is able. He's able to do more than we can ask, think, or imagine in your brain. God is able to do way more than that. So I wanted to leave you guys with that. I hope you were blessed with Philip. We will continue with, on January 3rd is our next class, because Ariel, are you going to keep? Well, it depends what the Lord gives you. I'll just tell you right now, guys, for January 3rd, our next person that we'll be speaking about is Bartholomew. I can't even say that. Bartholomew.